This is CX of M Radio, the voice of customer experience professionals.
Hello, and welcome to another World of UX podcast. This is your host, Darren Hood. Thanks for taking the time to join us, as always, everyone. And also, as always, welcome those of you who are joining us for the first time. As we approach our anniversary again, I decided to take a break from the Sinister series. I think there's so much that's being covered from the Sinister series or in the Sinister series that we just got to have breaks. There's too much stuff that some folks, it's a lot to take in. And so we, as we always tend to do, we have a segue. So we've got a segue for you today, and we're going back to that series, something we were doing during our anniversary last year, and we had to take a break. And I brought a group back. I'm very happy for the group that came back today, the mid-level UXers, I refer to these folks as. And when we tried to record this session before, there were some technical difficulties on my end. So, you know what? It's time. And what perfect timing so we can take a break from the Sinister series. We're doing this with the upcoming 4th anniversary of the World of UX podcast coming up here. I'm really excited. We're coming up. We're approaching episode number 200. So I'm excited about that. But I'm very, very excited for these people taking time out of their schedule to be with us and to share their thoughts about the world of UX with the UX community at large. So today, we've got Andy, we've got Christanna, we got Prachi, we've got these folks with us. I don't have my sound effects where I would play something there to just have a little fun. But these are the 3 folks that are with us today. We're going to go, as we always do, in alphabetical order, let everybody introduce themselves, and then we will be off to the races with our nice little energetic conversation here. Looking forward to it. So Andy, sir, go ahead, introduce yourself. Take it away, sir.
All right. Thank you, Darren. My name is Andy Shaffer. I am a lead UX designer with Chai One. We're a small, mid-size boutique agency currently supporting and providing solutions to top-tier enterprise-level organizations. We're a full package agency that, from back-end, front-end, but heavily focused on user research. How did I get my start into UX? Well, I've been doing this for quite a while. Let's see, even when I was starting in high school,
Wow.
had a tech class in 1999, and we learned HTML, and that's what drew me in.
Mm-hmm.
I took that on through college, worked my way through college, through various web designer jobs. That was my title for quite a long time. Then let's see, in the 2000 teens-ish time, I took a side stint in graphic design and was a lead graphic designer for a marketing team in the startup scene.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a lot of fun. Learned a lot of great experience there. Then I decided to kind of navigate back into UX after the industry kind of matured a lot, built a lot of focus on user research and kind of a user-centered design approach, which I thought was wonderful. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
graphic design and creative design is wonderful and a lot of fun, but it's very subjective. And that was really tough to sell your work in that arena. So that's a great thing about UX and having behavioral scientists to work with, to provide very extensive usability tests and analysis of how products perform and how they work for those folks. And so that's what drew me back in. I've been doing this now for, 10 years since that break. But I'm really enjoying it, learning things new every day. And I think that's about it. Let's see, the company I work for is based out of Houston, and I work remotely out of Vermont, near Burlington, Vermont.
Awesome.
So,
Awesome.
Pleasure to be here.
I love that self-awareness moment that you had to recognize that, and we talk about it all the time, that UX is a more of an objective discipline, but the more creative, the visual design, things of that nature, they're more subjective. And a lot of people don't understand that. And they try to come into UX without coming into knowledge of that. And that's going to make things difficult. It is definitely an objective discipline. So those of you who are thinking about getting into UX and you are operating in the more creative arena, the visual design, things of that nature, we are objective over here. It's not about what you see. It's not about what you think. It's about what works. And so, yeah, I rejoice hearing about that because a lot of people, they miss it. They miss it. Christanna, it is on you, ma'am. Take it away. Let the folks know who you are.
All right. Thanks so much, Darren. So currently I am a user experience researcher. So I've been in the UX research field for about a year, but in total, I've been in UX for, I believe this is year 8 for me. Hold on, let me see. 2018. Okay. Sometimes I got to count and remember, but this is year 8 for me. So I've worked as a UX designer solely. So now I'm just in the UX research space.
Mm-hmm.
So how I got into UX unconventionally. So for people who are trying to get into UX and like, what is it? So I had a little bit of a tease as far as understanding of kind of user experience in the sense that I was a teacher. And so when I was teaching, I actually taught a design thinking course. And so I taught design thinking to middle school students.
Wow.
But I was thinking to myself, I was like, it seems like it's more, it should be more after this design thinking. I'm like, I think it's something else. So then I started to search.
Oh, what a novel idea.
Yeah, I was like design thinking because we would watch videos by IDEO, and I'm like, okay, it just seemed like it was supposed to be more. So then I researched, did my research, and then I found user experience, and then I went and got my master's degree. And so once I got into the discipline, I saw how much I didn't know, like once I actually got into the discipline. So just because you go to school, and I went to a reputable school, I went to the University of Michigan. So it's not anything to sneeze at. But I definitely, once I got into the actual field, I feel like I learned a lot more. So with user experience, I learned, like any field, like just because you have a certificate or degree, it's a continuous learning process.
Yes.
You're always a learner. You're always a student of the discipline. So that's kind of how I got into the field. And yeah, so like I said, this is year 8 for me. And so, yeah.
Fantastic. Fantastic. One of the things you just mentioned that stands out is, of course, I'm going to piggyback on everybody as we're doing these intros. I'm reminded, because of course I teach at several universities, and one of the things that was reinforced to me was that when people go through a master's program, the illusion is, or the delusion is, that when you go through an educational program that you know everything you need to know. That's not true. Even when you're coming in, that's not it. When I teach at several master's programs and I teach at a UX certificate program for UCLA, for the master's programs in particular, what we're doing is putting a person on the road to mastery. It is what a person does with what they learn after that helps determine what's going to happen. That's what's going to really determine the trajectory. You don't go through a master's program and then that's it. You're all set. Why did I say that? Because you have people that they don't want to go through a master's program. They're opting for certificate programs, or they're opting for boot camps and things of that nature. And then the Kool-Aid that's being sold to those folks is that once you go through this, you have everything you need. Well, the folks in the master's programs, like what Christanna just said, the folks in the master's programs don't have everything they need. You definitely don't. In 6 months. So, and somebody recently, I don't know if you folks saw a post I put out there, a person said, you know what, you don't need all of that stuff. Come to me. I've got a curriculum. You can learn everything you need to know about UX in 2 days. Did anybody see that post? Somebody, I put a screenshot of the post. It's 2 days? Are you kidding? No. When you come into UX, you are opting into lifelong learning. Period. You will always be learning. There will always be something new that you need to expose yourself to. And even the things that you feel that you have a solid handle on, there's always ways to get better at that. So know and understand, however you learn, it's a journey and you never arrive. So you just remind me of that. So I thought I'd chime in with that little tidbit. All right. Thank you for that. Prachi. All right. Tell the people who you are, ma'am.
Thank you, Darren. So I also am a user experience researcher. I'm from India, and I stumbled upon the field of UX because I was in IT, and the kind of projects we were dealing with were mostly bug fixing and issues reported by the client teams that were based in US.
Mm-hmm.
And I found myself that within 6 months, I was no longer coding anymore. And my team kind of relied on me to talk to the clients and the doctors and nurses. It was a diagnostic app to figure out why these problems were happening in the first place. And then I realized that it has a name and it's called design. And then I went on to do my master's from the National Institute of Design in India.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember in the first year, I was kind of naive, and I remember asking a senior of mine to teach me UX design because she was on campus for 2 weeks. And now looking back, I imagine how naive my request was. And that's I completely agree. I'm a lifelong learner also. And I've majorly worked in B2C apps in the domains of commute, education, and fashion and retail.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. The thing that comes to mind with your intro is that something else that people need to be aware of is that you'll think you know certain things, but the truth is none of us didn't know what we didn't know. And as you continue to advance in the discipline, you come into a higher level of self-awareness with regard to what you know and what you don't. That's when you get control over your trajectory. That's when you truly get control over your journey. And a lot of people, okay, well, I learned, I'm ready to do this now. Oh, really? Sit down and talk to somebody who's seasoned and watch and see how much you really know. And you'll find out, whoa, I can't tell you how many people I've talked to, and they'll say, I thought I knew X, Y, and Z until I sat down and talked to this person and this person and this person. There's a lot to take in. And then the funny thing is, when you look at a specific topic, everybody's not doing it the same way, and you don't have to do everything the same way. So that means that there's a lot of different schools of thought. And so we spend a lot of time being exposed to different schools of thought. And it really helps us to be more diverse with our approaches. I hear people talking about, I talked to somebody today who said that they had a friend that was in academia, wanted to get into UX research. And when they cited what they knew already about UX research, they didn't realize that they didn't know. They didn't know what was going on. I do surveys after all my classes. They thought that was UX research. Because and I work in academia. I don't do my survey. You can survey your students, but the school is going to do it. And then they analyze and synthesize and provide you with the report. So we don't do any of that. So this person had not really done any of the work, but they thought that they did. And on top of that, I love the universal design books. There's multiple books, and one of them focuses solely on research. And there are 125 methods, methodologies, techniques, and deliverables. So you're talking about surveys. Well, that's one of 125. So there's a lot more to be learned, right? A lot more a lot more to consider. We only use about 15 of them tops on a consistent basis, but even of the 15, what do you know? So yeah, we don't know what we don't know, and we should be passionate about trying to discover what we don't know, because that's when we discover great opportunities to grow. So that's what that reminds me of.
Exactly.
Yes.
And I just wanted to share a quote that
Go for it.
I remembered. It's in theory, there is no difference between theory and practice. In practice, there is. So
Yep.
I always remember this. Yeah.
It's a lot of people, especially the people who go through the educational route, especially if it's like formal at the university level, you're going to hear more theory oriented things when you go through formal education. And that's why, I mean, I was always taught, I'm very well versed in the science of education, and any learning experience revolves around presentation, application, and feedback. So you're going to hear information, you're going to be presented with some content. You have to have opportunity to practice what you learn, and then you get feedback on how well you did, where you need to improve, things of that nature. And a lot of learning experiences, people are not getting that. They're not getting that. So you get the theories and the presentation, but are you going to go and actually try to apply these things? Your trial and error, your discovery. There's so much that happens at that application stage, but a lot of people don't get to practice it. Or I'll throw something in here about the Google program, which I'm sure you folks have heard me rant about before. And in that program, there's presentation, there's application, and the feedback comes from peers. So basically that doesn't qualify as feedback. So that's not a legitimate learning experience, because there really is no feedback. It's coming, and people are cheating. They'll turn in blank assignments and say, will you please pass me? I just want to complete the course. And people sign off. This is actually happening at epidemic levels. So 400,000 graduates, but how many of them fake their way through it? Just to say that they went. And then the joke that's on some of those people is, if you go through the program, Google won't hire you.
Yeah.
And people don't talk about how about that? So yeah, that comes in real handy there. Let's get into some of our topics for today. Thank you for those intros, and just let me know, chime in. We don't have to go in any particular order, but I'll throw the topic out there, and then we'll just run with it from that perspective. The first topic that we were going to talk about, and I'm going to flip the order on these just a tad differently from what we talked about before we began recording. Tell me about one of your most inspiring moments that you have experienced as a UX professional. Who wants to start us off with inspiring moments? I see the wheels turning. Everybody's looking up at the ceiling. Isn't it funny how we do that? We start thinking, we look like there's an answer up there.
That's right. It's up there somewhere. You just gotta look at it.
It's funny how that works. The only thing I see is the previous owners of the house put stars on the ceiling for their kids that glow in the dark. So I can't look up there because all I think about is the fact that, man, I still want to get those stars now. But who wants to start us off on this topic? Who has a story about an inspiring moment, a light bulb moment, something that just wowed you that happened, something that shocked you, surprised you in UX? I still see Christanna looking up at the ceiling there. So
I could go first. I mean, I just remembered something.
Go.
So I remember it was one of the first research projects that I had done. It was a usability study for an education platform. And they had developed this feature in which the teacher could actually see the notebooks, the digital notebooks of 6 of her students.
Okay.
And their idea was to figure out that by looking at the notebook, the teacher will figure out which child is stuck and where. And when I was doing this test, I remember one of the teachers was like, I asked her, can you figure out which child is stuck and where? And she was like, but I don't see their faces. How will I know which child is stuck? And that was really an enlightening thing for me, that for the teacher, the face of the child is the interface, not the notebook of the child. And I still think about it sometimes, and I think it's something I often remember.
Oh, goodness, man. There's just some ideas come to mind. I'm not going to dive in on your project, but if I have a few ideas that come up, because I wonder, I worked on something like that once before too. because I helped redesign the National Geographic Learning's English as a second language platform. And in that program, because you mentioned children, so it's going to be a little bit different. The initiative is going to be different, but these were adult learners. And so it was feedback that served as that trigger. So they would know to reach out and engage with the learner if they would express concerns, submit a request, things of that nature. So they were able to optimize that dynamic, that interpersonal dynamic in a digital learning interface. That's the challenge. Because when you see people and you know what's going on, I think about a classroom. You're walking around in a classroom with kids. You're walking around watching them work. You can see facial expressions. People are raising hands. You can see if somebody is struggling because you can see what they're doing. With adult learners, the dynamics are different.
Yeah.
It's different. And a lot of adults don't like. It's funny, when we were kids, we weren't afraid to look stupid. When there's adults learn how to play all kinds of little weird little games, and one of them is that they don't want to ask certain questions because they don't want to look a certain way. Yeah. So that just comes to mind. You make me think about that. Anybody else? Inspiring moments. Looks like everybody else is settled.
I've got one.
The facial expressions say you have arrived.
I think for me was the moment when I realized that my work wasn't about me and my performance.
Oh, yes.
I was working with the Salt Lake City School District. I was the communications designer there. So the title was a bit misleading. I was the web designer, but also the creative director for the whole district. So we had several schools, like 40 schools and maybe 15 different departments that were independent of each other and had their own communication efforts. But what I began to hold monthly content management trainings, because they're mostly set up with like, how do you update your school website? Because I'm one person. I can't do all of that. First of all, I don't know what the heck's going on at every single school at all the time. And so I wanted to empower teams, or sometimes one person at each school, to help contribute to their messaging to their families. And as I, picked up some steam with those training courses, I was getting a lot of feedback that, it was very appreciative. Folks appreciated that I would put this on a consistent basis, have open office hours, and no matter their skill level, because sometimes I was getting parents with almost hardly no computer experience at all, but they were willing. And that kind of made me realize it took the ego out of my work. I think most of us who get into some sort of creative field is because we have good taste. And how do we build that taste? Well, we like seeing pretty things. And we like it so much, we start noticing it everywhere we look, from restaurant menus to interior design to vehicles. I mean, you name it. And since technology and the digital age has put a screen in front of us all the damn time, we see that, and we are constantly teaching ourselves what good design is because we are interested in it. So we naturally are leading, or I guess a little bit more advanced than, our other counterparts in other industries doing other jobs. And when they come to us to hire us for work, we sometimes, especially when we're new, we know that we know more than them. And sometimes that comes off poorly. Sometimes it doesn't. But even if that comes off in a good way, it still can confuse the folks that we want to work with and help. So I kind of realized from hearing that, and then I kept growing on that, like, oh, this isn't about me. I need to listen. Like, what is it? What is the problem we're trying to solve? Not that I know this button looks better here because I've seen it around, or or whatever the reason is, does it accomplish the pain point? Does it accomplish the goal? And so that was huge for me, and especially diving just from the old Wild West web design days. Darren, you remember those? To a more systematic approach to digital interfaces and using research to inform those decisions. That was huge, and I think for a lot of folks getting into it, they, I don't know if they hear that in higher ed or not. I'm mostly self-taught, although I'm furthering my education every day. But that you see that a lot with youngsters or just new designers in general, is that they walk around with their head high, and they feel that they know all the answers, and they're not really willing to budge, even when what is needed is not the best looking thing. That's okay.
Yeah.
Accomplish the goal within the boundaries that were set, whether it's financial boundaries, time boundaries, other resource boundaries, tech boundaries. The goal is to satisfy the need within those boundaries, and there's really no room for ego in that. So that was my huge, I guess, aha moment, I guess you could say.
That's fantastic. And you remind me of a recent social media post where I just reminded people, UX, real UX, is not quote unquote sexy. It's about accomplishing goals. It's about meeting needs. It's about delighting users. It's about matching their mental models. And the prettiest thing out there doesn't necessarily do that. Or if it fails to do it, now you're going to have an issue where you can really ruffle the feathers of that customer, and that's not a good thing. That's not good for the business. It's not good for your UX department's reputation. A lot of issues there. So yeah, real UX is not sexy, and it takes a while for some people to get that. I mean, years for some people to get it. So, yep, Christanna.
So, thinking about inspiring moments, I guess it came very early in my career, before I actually graduated. So a part of my master's program, I had to do an internship over the summer. So this happened in like 2015. And so I was doing a user experience research internship down in Atlanta. And so it was my first professional job, in the sense that I was an intern. So I had did some research, and I had given some feedback about this particular design, and I gave out the analysis, and I read my report, and that was the first time I was in a meeting, and the designer who had worked on it, I mean, they just railed on me in this meeting. And so I was like, oh my goodness. I was like, but this is what the participants said, the users of this particular product. And so my manager at the time, and this is where it comes in inspiring, she was just really supportive. And so even this particular setting that we're in, as far as a podcast and the support network that's necessary within the UX field, she provided that. And so she just gave me a lot of support in that role as far as what our responsibilities were as the professional, to say, we report out what the users say. People may not like it. We don't try to hold hands. We don't try to sugarcoat things. And she told me I did the right thing. And so for me, that was like the aha, like I felt good. And I was like, okay, I'm doing the right thing. Like, why I got into this, I'm getting the support needed from management level at that time. And shout out to Sherry Sipsis. I'm still in contact with her. And it came full circle for me once I decided to go into a UX research specific role, as far as just that experience and being supported there. And so I appreciate community for the UX field, because like we were talking about before kind of the podcast started, sometimes that does not always happen in this field. And so when you find people that are supportive and are there and lift you up, you remember those things. And so that was 2015, and it's many years later. And I remember that because I definitely needed that at the time, but I still remember that. And so, yeah.
That's such a fantastic point, and it's something we don't hear people talk about enough, that we're all we have. A lot of times you can be exposed to stakeholders and clients so much, and those interactions are usually, they're more volatile than not. And it's not until you can get together with the UX team and sharpen iron and bounce thoughts off each other, or have a critique session. And that's another story. I try not to get on the soapbox about that, but it's that time that we spend with UXers that helps ground us, because we get to sit and talk to people who understand who we are, who understand how we think. The value systems are usually the same if you're in a good environment. And so that support comes forth, and now you're ready to go and take on the world. You feel like that when you sit and talk to UXers and you go away, you're ready to take on the world, and then you get out there and they're shooting down your wireframes and they're doing all other kind of stuff, and you're sitting there listening to them talk, and they're trying to do your job and they don't realize it, and you got to sit there and take that in, because they're getting all into, what if we do this? What if we do that? I like this. I like that. No, how about you folks just talk about the requirements? Because we just spent 40 minutes of you trying to do my job and you have no idea. And that's painful to listen to that stuff. And then we come back and talk to the UXers, and then everybody's talking about the challenges. Everybody's talking about the work they did. Everybody's trying to get together, band together, and talk about solving problems. And when we come out, we feel like, I don't know if anybody ever saw the old cartoon Underdog, and when he wanted to do something, he'd take his little super underdog, super energy pill. That's sort of like what it feel like. It's like you took a vitamin or something. You're ready to go after that. So that support is huge. And like I'm talking about in the series that we're preempting right now, that we're taking a segue from, about the sinister nature. And so we'll throw a little sinister trait in here, because I don't think I talked about this. We don't support each other enough. Whether it's on LinkedIn, you don't have to just support people that work with you. Support people that don't work with you. We need to support one another, because our relationship is still misunderstood grossly. When you go to a meeting, we are the babies in the room from a discipline standpoint. Everybody understands the product managers. Everybody understands the product owners. Everybody understands the developers. Everybody understands the QA people. Everybody understands the account manager. And then UX comes in. We're the only people that folks try to do our work. We're the only people that people want to democratize. And it drives us crazy when it happens. So we're trying to accomplish something while trying to maintain our sanity, because of all the dysfunction that we're constantly being subjected to. So we need to support each other more. And instead, folks are out there trying to make a name for themselves. I saw a post today where there was a post, somebody wrote me on LinkedIn, and hey, Darren, you got to see this post on Medium. And it was about what's the difference between a UX designer and a UI designer. And I went, wow, this is 2024. So many people have written about that. And I looked at this article, and all that person did was regurgitate what other people had already said. So here's where you have the people who are trying to make a name for themselves, or somebody said you need to put yourselves out there. So they'll do it by any means necessary. So they'll go and get other people's content, plagiarize it, act like they did something. And if you think that's bad, guess what the end of the post talked about? Oh, and if you want to get more understanding, you should take our UX UI course. So when the whole thing was said and done, they were trying to sell a course. And it was said, a UX/UI course. Isn't that crazy? So you said all that to let us know that you're still infected. You tried to clarify the difference between UX and UI, and all you did was muddy the waters again. So we all of these types of things are going on, and the war against seniors and all these different types of things. And so we lack support. We don't get support. Somebody will get upset with me about this. We lack support from our associations. Our associations are not supporting us the way that they should. From a UX perspective, you can't go there and hear a voice of reason, which ironically is what UXers are. Anybody in the UX field is a voice of reason. Wherever you work, whatever you do, everybody's talking crazy. We're the ones that come in and settle everything down. That's what we do. But if we're crazy, you can't settle everybody down if you're nuts. So that's just not going to work. So we need to support each other, and we lack it. We lack it. I wish we could do more of that, but it's something else. So there's a little sinister trait, even in the segue. I got to throw one in there. So, but cool stuff. So good, inspiring moments. I'm sure that folks could think of other ones. We're going to move on to another one of the topics, though. What have you, or how did you, as you transition from your, what you consider to be that entry-level stage, however long of an incubation period you felt that was, when you started getting into more of a mid-level, when you were confident that you were a mid-level UXer, what was that transition like for you? And what type of things come to mind that you might say to other people who are trying to manage their maturity and their growth in the discipline? I know that, and I will throw this in for me, I sort of, as you folks are giving that some thought, I love it. We've been talking about this with other people recently, how that the main part of emotional intelligence, and that every emotional intelligence expert talks about, is self-awareness. And I know for me, it was about consciously being aware of how well you're doing and not being afraid to say that there's something you don't know, and then deliberately trying to advance your skill in a certain area, and then just constantly going through that cycle and just doing it all the time. That over the years was just big. I hunt still to this day. If a topic comes up, I'm going to hunt. Even if it's something I already know that I know, I'm going to hunt and try to find where can I grow concerning that topic. I feel I'm sound concerning that topic, but what if I find out there's something I don't know? Because we don't know what we don't know. Again, so how about I hunt for it? How about I look for it? How about I expose myself to people talking about this topic, waiting for them to drop some nugget that I'm not aware of? And now, growth opportunity. So that's the big thing for me. And even at my 28 years, I still do it. To this day, I will listen to a lecture, a talk about something that I feel I'm well versed in, hoping to hear something I do not know.
It's like watching that movie. You catch that line that you've seen that movie 1,000 times, and then you catch that line, and you're like, I never knew. Man, that was good. I never noticed that before, or whatever. Yeah.
What thoughts do you folks have about that maturity track?
For me, that's a really good question, because it's tough. We make various strides and hit milestones through our career. I think for me, when you're starting out, you're working either in teams or solo, and you're being guided, right? You're being guided with the work, and you're more or less a graphic designer for a screen, and that's great. It's fantastic. You're learning the software, you're learning file management skills, you're learning how to take instruction. But as we graduate into those maturity levels, into mid and even senior, I think you slowly start to build the ability to explain and convey the why.
Yes.
You build up all that experience, and you can do Figma, you can do XD. Back then, you can do Dreamweaver, you can write the code, and then it becomes second nature, and then you don't have to think about it anymore. And then it's like, well, now what? I'm bored, and I want to try to do the next level. I want to try to go for mid or junior or lead, and that level is more about the communication. I feel communicating the why, the reasoning of your decision-making skills to solve a problem.
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to have all kinds of different voices and personalities in the room that need to be convinced, because in creative industry, everyone feels like they can do it at home, or their high school kid can do it. And that's the battle we got to battle sometimes. And I feel like if we can articulate why we make decisions and have evidence, scientific evidence to back it up,
Mm-hmm.
and articulate that scientific evidence, testing results, whatever it is, that for me is that kind of line, is when we can articulate the why, then we can start moving forward and progressing. And then we start farming out the pixel pushing to juniors, because they need to come through the same way.
Yes.
So that would be my advice. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. I have that in my. I've been speaking about personal UX maturity, which is something we never hear people talk about, and that's part of my model. How well can you communicate on this topic? On a scale of 0 to 2.5, how well can you communicate? Because if you have the confidence and you know you've done it, okay, good. Give yourself a higher score. If you know that you struggle at it, don't be afraid. It doesn't mean you don't have to go give all your paychecks back. It just means that this is an area where you can grow. But yeah,
and be humble about it too, right? Like even the other day, and my boss Michelle, right?
Yep.
The other day I asked her about a checkbox state. Like there's still some simple things that either just elude my mind at the time, or you got to not be afraid to say, I don't know. I don't know. I need help. And no matter if it seems like a seemingly entry-level question, that's all right. We're all trying to move forward, and we all have the same goal of success.
Yep.
And then going back to what we were just talking about, support. And we're lucky to find, especially in a co-working environment, to have that internal support on the team, even cross-team relationships. And if you find that, hold on to it.
Yeah.
Don't waste the money.
Yeah.
Because you lose your mind out there.
Wow, that's huge too, because a lot of people will jump from job to job chasing money. If you have a good boss, that's worth its weight in gold times 10. Because most UX bosses today don't know anything about UX. And if they don't know anything about UX and you do, they're not going to be able to value you. I talk about this all the time. They're not going to be able to value you, and you are going to have some sleepless nights. And you don't want to go there. You don't want to go there. Who else has a thought on this one?
So I was thinking about that transition from junior to mid. And for me, it was learning the power of no. And so that's kind of piggybacking on Andy, where once you're able to explain your reports, or explain your process, you have the ability to be able to say no and back it up. That's really important, because when you're a junior, you're just learning, and you're almost like a order taker, where it's just like yes, 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 yes. But then you start to get to the point where you start to question, okay, why am I doing this? Where did this request come from?
Yes.
Was this just somebody who was a CEO and then they saw it was a problem? Or is this actually something that we can look at some data and say, this is a problem? So you start getting projects, and you're able to start saying, no, this is not really a problem, but this may be a problem. So for me, that learning to say no to certain things, being able to back it up and have the data to support my no, that empowered me to be able to feel like, okay, I'm not just an order taker anymore. I'm not just hurrying up, doing wireframes at the time. And going through that process, I matured in the sense that looking at problems more holistically.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that was my transition from junior to mid. Once I was able to say no confidently,
Mm-hmm.
back it up, and people respected it. So that respect factor is key as well, because
Yes.
stakeholders, if they don't trust your results, they don't trust your designs, not only are you not going to be out of there, but they're not going to respect you either. So it's really important
Yep.
from when you're a junior to build um, your personal brand, kind of, as far as just being able to support what you're doing, have the evidence, and do true UX, and not just pull opinions, because people are going to call you on it.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to figure you out. So once you learn to do true UX and having data to support it, you get that respect, and then you can say no. So you can't just
Yeah.
start off, people that are new to the field, you just can't start off saying no. You got to kind of build yourself up to
Yeah.
be able to push back a little bit on your stakeholders when they're just throwing stuff at you, to be able to say why, and then explain the why. So yeah.
Yeah. You remind me of earlier in my career, I worked at a design agency where we were responsible for doing the work for Ford Motor Company. And I had the nickname amongst some of the stakeholders on our side that were doing the work. My nickname was Dr. No. Because they would constantly try to get us to do something. We can't do that. And immediately I would explain why. And I would explain both sides of it. So they didn't take it personally. It just got funny after a while. But they didn't take it personally, because not only do we have to learn how to tell people no, but we have to learn how to be diplomatic when we do it, so that people don't take it personally, and you can't be all hotsy-totsy about it, and you have to and unprofessional in the presentation. I'm also reminded about the fact that how important it is to learn how to say no, because I've been in a situation before where people know that the client is about to head in a destructive direction, and they will respect you. They may not like it when they hear you say no, but they will eventually respect you for having said no, especially when you bring the data that proves it, as opposed to saying nothing, and then they find out that you knew and said nothing, and then they lose $100,000, and then they find out that they lost $100,000 because you decided to spare their feelings. You're toast after that. And I see that a lot. And that's why I talk about UX being under siege, because a lot of today's product designers, that's exactly what they do. That's all that they do. A lot of the cult of UX, that's what they do. When marketing rules UX, that's what happens. But when real UX gets done, we shouldn't do this. This is why. This is the risk. And I always document it. And if they say, okay, Darren, we understand where you're coming from, but we're going to do this. Like, okay, I did my job. We don't own our designs. And a lot of people, up and comers, don't know that. We don't own it. So we own the user experience, but we don't have the clout to force them to accept our recommendation. So if they fall, I love how they always come back.
Mm-hmm.
Just be sitting there waiting with your documentation. Don't say I told you so. Be professional.
Yep.
Be nice about it. And okay, I remember we did we'll let Prachi get to her point. We were working on something for Ford Motor Company back in the day. Whenever a new vehicle comes out, there's a reveal where they're telling people this car is coming, and then there's a launch when the car is available. And so we did the reveal for this one particular vehicle that was being reintroduced to the market after being gone for years. And we did all of our groundwork. I presented the wireframes, and as usually is the case, the creative people wanted to do their own thing. So they wanted to ignore what I did. And back in that day, they were trying to win the Flash Site of the Week award. And some people probably remember that crazy stuff. And so they went ahead and they ignored what I did, modified things, rolled it out, and it failed. And when we got ready to do the launch, we went through the same process. I did my wireframes. I presented them to the group, but before the creative people who were going to ignore me and do their own thing again, they were going to ignore the fact that we were doing the launch. They were going to ignore the fact that the reveal site failed. And so they're just going to do what they wanted to do. And the product owner said, you know what? I appreciate what everybody is doing here. I appreciate what you folks did last time, but it did fail. This time we're going to do what Darren recommended. And when he had my back and he stood up and did that, they executed exactly what my recommendations were. And it turned out to be the best launch site in the history of Ford Motor Company at the time. But I had all the documentation. I wasn't raising a fuss about it. I did my job. And they respected me for that. And so by me being more peaceable and diplomatic, it actually set the stage for them to accept the recommendations next time around. And we all succeeded and everybody benefited from that. So pretty cool stuff. So yeah, we got to be willing to say no. Be willing to say no. I saw a situation once where the company was misspelling words, but they were misspelling words knowingly because they said it registered, they got more SEO out of it. That doesn't make any sense. That doesn't make any sense. So yeah, all right. Well, we'll step on. Prachi.
Yeah, really quite some interesting points hearing all three of you. And I think I had a lot of similar experiences as well. But for me, I think three things were crucial when I first joined being in UX research to when I transitioned to having my own team of researchers. I fortunately had the luck to work with a lot of great designers and design managers. And I also established the UX research teams there, being a newbie myself. So I didn't really have somebody to give me orders, at least in my department.
Yeah.
So I kind of did things and I made a few mistakes. But over time, I realized and I kept on iterating on how to do recruitment of talent or how to set up research repositories or processes.
Mm-hmm.
And what I had in those times, and which was required, was the bias for action. But transitioning into a more senior position or a mid-level position, instead of bias for action, it became purposeful action.
Mm-hmm.
So not just action that looks like activity is going on.
Busy work. UX hamster work.
Exactly. Like, for instance, I never even needed ever to create an empathy map in my whole life.
Mm-hmm.
And I dedicated so much time to learning that. And no product manager or business person has ever told me, oh, where's the empathy map for this project? And I realized that videos were actually much more useful. So we focused on the art of crafting those videos, very simple things, but
Mm-hmm.
there's no substitute for voice of the user if you actually hear and see them. So
yeah. That's good. That sounds good. Yes. It's funny how people think sometimes that they have to always do certain things and they get to that checkbox mentality. But it's better to pivot and say, what's going to benefit us the most here? Let's do that. And not be forced. Okay, well, no, we got to do the next thing on the checklist. Not necessarily the case. I know a lot of people today, they're being taught to follow this strict, rigid, same set of steps. But if you're working on something different and you're dealing with different personas, different needs, different pain points, you may not have to do things the same way all the time. So yeah, more people need to know and understand that. We're going to move to our last question. I removed one question from the list. The last question, this was probably relatively simple, but what are your thoughts on UXR versus UX design as opposed to, and it could be anything, passion points, where you feel the importance is with regard to the two of them? When I was coming up, and Andy, I'm sure you saw this as well because of how long you've been doing this. When we were doing the UX work back in 2002, 2005, 2010, there were no specializations, or they were very, very, very rare. we were all generalists. So we did design and research, where then in 2012, it split. If this was 2007, you wouldn't be able to get a UX researcher job for the most part. They weren't being advertised anywhere. You were getting it was always called UX design, UX architect, interaction designer, or information architect. But no matter what your title was, you always did design and research and strategy. That's the way I came up. So what are your thoughts on anything with regard to how we're today? People say there's the designers. Some people have actually tried to separate the UXers. Like it's a completely different discipline. No, we're all under the same umbrella. And actually splitting us makes us weaker. And people don't realize that. So, but what are your thoughts on the topic? And it's a free-for-all. Anything that comes to mind with regard to UXR and UX design is good here. Go ahead, Christanna. I see you loaded up.
Yeah, I guess I am, because I've been thinking about this recently. So when I was a UX designer for 6 years, I was essentially a UX generalist because I did both design and research. And I really liked that. And so I came over to the UX research side of things. And so I've been doing it for about a year. And I've been evaluating after this year. I had my year anniversary last week. And so I just kind of did like an evaluation of how am I feeling about this role. And so for me, now that I'm doing UX research specialty, for me, I'm seeing a disconnect for me, and I'm just being candid. I guess I've started to struggle a little bit because I'm used to being in a project and knowing the full design cycle of being able to know the requirements and talk to the stakeholders at the beginning. And so now in a UX research role, it's like I'm getting everything on the back end of it. And so I have so many questions. And so once the project finally gets to me and I'm still asking, I guess, design questions, because I start off like, okay, where did this problem or question come from? Do we have voice of the customer data? Did this come from a stakeholder they saw was a problem? Where is this coming from? And what's essentially happening is they're like, you don't have to worry about that now. You're just do this qualitative research for us. We vetted it. This is a legit project. And so for me, I'm having a lot of thoughts there right now. So it's interesting you asked that question, because when I was in a generalist role, I felt more connected to the product that I was designing, because I'm doing the design. I know which research I need. And even now, it's like I'm a UX researcher, but I'm being only pushed like one way. Either I'm doing unmoderated interview for something or moderated. I'm like, well, I want to do other methodologies, but where I'm at is always, well, we need moderated interview. I'm like, that's not the only thing that I know how to do. So it's become a little bit frustrating, because the designers where I'm at, they do the competitive analysis, they do the heuristic evaluations, they do all the other methodologies that I'm interested in doing and know how to do and was used to doing. And now I'm just pitted to, well, you're a moderator. So now I'm just feeling like, am I really a UX researcher, or am I just a moderator? So
would it be safe to say that when you were doing both, that you felt like you were more empowered?
Yes. Yes. So like I said, just a week ago, I started just evaluating. Like, I feel very disconnected from a lot of the products that I'm doing research for, because it's like I'm getting it not necessarily at the end of the product cycle, but where I'm getting it, I still have so many questions, and I'm not there to understand like those requirements, where those requirements came from. So yeah, so it's been an interesting year for me.
And researchers need to have the autonomy to do it, because the name of the game with any research is to obtain actionable, trustworthy data that will help inform the work. What does it take to get there? Well, it depends on what we're trying to do. So there has to be a certain degree of autonomy. So, okay, I mean, we mentioned universal design earlier. All these methods, I've got them all laid out here. Which one will best serve what I'm doing right now? And you need to be able to go, you know what? I need to do a contextual analysis. I need to do a cognitive walkthrough. You know, right here, why don't we just do some first click testing? Maybe we need to load up Crazy Egg and do some heat mapping and pull that data out and find out what people, you know, and so a lot of times research can be detrimentally impacted if the work is presented from a pigeonhole perspective. So that's all I'll say about that. Oh, who's gonna go next? I am suppressing myself, just in case you hadn't guessed. Who has another thought on UXR and UX design? Prachi, you look loaded up.
Well, in my experience, I've always noticed that good designers, great designers, almost certainly have a great, solid understanding of research.
Mm-hmm.
And designers who will find their designs frequently going into iterations, and the results show that it doesn't work out. But usually we were teamed up with designers and we worked on projects together. So we were able to course correct very fast, like within a couple of days timeline. So in a way, I appreciate working closely with designers where you can communicate what both of you specialize in, but also have an understanding of each other's process and where your authority kind of stops and where you actually have to pass the baton, as you could say.
Yeah.
There is one thing, however, that I feel that researchers kind of have taken a backseat on, is not because of a fault of us, but product managers or anybody who feels that they can talk, feels that they can do research.
Yeah.
And many of them can't do Figma yet. So they still kind of prize the designer's opinion more over the researcher's opinion. And that's something I would like to see change.
Yeah, it's funny. You remind me of how when people talked about the democratization of research, they talk about it because they use the term democratization literally, and they don't understand the history of democratization. The initial goal of democratization was not everybody do the work. It was everybody participate in the synthesis, in the analysis and the synthesis. That's really what was initially meant. And so everybody jumped. Now everybody wants to do, and they feel like, oh, I can put together a test in user testing. Oh, I can do this and that. No, you actually can't. This is a science. We are scientists. There are a lot of people who work in UX that do not know that we are scientists. And it is an infinite science, meaning that everything is always shaking and moving, and there's a lot of things that we do on the research side or on the UX side that's not rigid. So hence it's an infinite science. When your developers are trying to build what you design, they're dealing with a finite science because they've got to deal with their JavaScript or whatever code they're working with, and they're bound by the constraints of that language.
Yeah.
They can't come up with an idea on the spot. Either that language will do that or it won't. And so, but with us, it shifts and it moves. And that's why a lot of times people struggle with what we talk about as UXers, because we present something that's associated with an infinite science. And they a lot of times can't relate to what we're talking about until we translate our infinite work into finite work in the form of data.
Yeah.
So to speak. Once that data is there, now it's finite. It has limits. It has boundaries. Oh, I see what you're saying now. But when you first said it, they're like, why do you think we should do that? I don't think that's not you. I once made 70 changes to a page, and my boss didn't think I had done anything because they don't understand. They don't understand. I'm looking at things from a micro experience perspective. On top of the fact that we're paid to be anal, any UXers that aren't anal, they're not doing their job. We're paid to be anal, and when a lot of people hear that term, they get, "Oh, what do you mean?" It's the root word of analysis. Calm down. We're very, very analytical. We're extremely analytical, not to be anal retentive or being a jerk about what we observe, but trying to understand the weeds, because that's really where the experience is made or it breaks. When people complain about something, it's usually something that's happened at the micro level. And so if you don't examine at the micro level and that problem comes through and it happens at the micro level, you have lost because you didn't pay attention to micro experiences. So it's really critical, but these people, they're not supposed to do our work. They don't know how to. I mean, have you ever had a stakeholder attend a research effort and they can't be quiet to save their life?
I couldn't agree more. I had a senior, I wouldn't name him, but I had a VP of a product of a huge multinational company. That interview was the longest pitch ever. He was pitching to the user in the interview.
No, zip it. Zip it, dude. Zip it. I mean, I've seen people, you're trying to have them perform a task, and the person that's sitting in there, they're not able to perform the task. If you can't perform the task, we want to know that. They can't take it. Oh, why are you doing? All you have to do is, I'm like, no. So now the data is the data integrity is shot now.
Yep.
Or you have one test and then they want to change it. And then when you get ready to go with the third participant, then they want to change it. You go to the fourth participant, they want to change it. Well, now the garbage in, garbage out. We have to test it the same way. People don't know that, in other words, people don't know that research has to be designed. And so that eliminates the amateur from being a part of this process. Let me know what you need. I'll let you know when the data is ready and I have analyzed and synthesized it. We'll get together and we'll walk through the whole thing and we'll handle this together. But I don't need you with me, just like you don't need me with you while you're doing this stuff over here. I don't need you over here with me. And so because we've got this order taker mindset now, and it has infected the entire, like every level of what's happening with UX. And so now we're being impacted because people are being involved where they shouldn't. And you know what actually started that to a great extent? What sort of legitimized it in a sense, air quotes, design thinking. Because it ushered people to a position that they didn't normally have access to. Everything that design thinking said it offered us, we were already doing that. So now you want to take away the users and you want to replace the users with subject matter experts and stakeholders. People who are just completely intoxicated by bias. So now you've got these bias-intoxicated, bias-driven people in places that normally they wouldn't be in. And we're trying to roll out solutions that are coming from tainted sources. And that's why you see a lot of the things that you see today and why, again, UX has been under siege since 2011, 2012 for these very same reasons. Not good. Not good at all. See, and I got my soapbox. So come back down. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to let Andy close off this topic today.
Well, I might have slightly differencing in opinion, which I think is great.
Yeah.
So I kind of feel like a good analogy here might help to explain my position. I'd like to compare it to the medical field, let's say, right? So long time ago, it was just one person, a shaman maybe, or a healer or a medicine person. They were doing everything, and they were learning as they went. Fast forward a little ways, I don't know. And this is kind of like in between, that was, I don't know, not Stone Age time, but hunter-gatherer, tribal systems,
Yeah.
get in between there, right? Let's go to the Dark Ages. I kind of feel like we're in the Dark Ages right now, where we're really awkward. We and we're experimenting with what practices work. So like we're in that stage where we're drilling holes in people's heads or draining
Leeches.
blood or doing absolutely crazy, dangerous things that hurt people. That's what I kind of feel like we're in that weird, awkward stage because, look at the medical field now. You have specialists that are very, very, very minutely specialized in very specific functions, and they are educated as such. That's kind of my take on that, the entire UX umbrella, really. And I feel like that's going to split even more. And it also kind of depends on the set and setting. We have, are you in an environment where there's a lot of resource? Take, for example, medical field, you have small towns in the rural areas, you have one person or one office that does the generalized work for everyone in the community. You move to a more urban setting, and you have large hospitals with very specialized personnel who can attack specific problems. So it kind of depends on where your setting is, right? So if you are in a work environment where there's a lot of resource, there's a lot of money, right? We can afford specialists. Then I think it would only benefit the overall goal to bring in folks who are specially trained in, we're talking about UXR here, so specially trained in statistics, analysis, data collection. They're trained in psychology. They're trained in human ergonomics, and they bring that to the table. They've spent 100% of their time focusing on the human condition to be able to derive meaningful data to support design, specific design. So UI design, the same thing. Maybe you went to art school and you focused 100% of your energy on how humans communicate visually. And then you marry that together. And we're in that middle stage where we had to do it all, right? When we were starting out, we didn't have researchers. We had to do guerrilla research. We had to go out there and crunch those numbers ourselves, think of questions, figure out what questions work, how to ask them, what privacy issues you have. We did that all ourselves. And we still are in a lot of ways, though it benefits everyone to know what everyone on your team is doing, to be aware of what that function does, maybe not how to do it, but understand the value that everyone brings to the table and know how to communicate and really, like basketball team, right? Everyone has a position. Some people can't play the other positions, but they know about it. And so that's kind of my take on it is, depending on your setting, or what you want to do. Maybe you like to be the one person show. I was the one person show for most of my career.
Yeah.
It was hard. I love working with behavioral scientists now. It is a pleasure. They bring so much to the table, and I learn from them, every day. So I feel like in my opinion, the industry would only benefit by specialized tracks that are maybe some tracks will kind of get dissolved or roll into other ones. And of course, we have more senior. When you're getting into senior and leadership, you got to know how to play in all the fields, right? You are the sub for any position to accomplish that goal. And so, I think maybe I have slightly different angle there, but but I'm also looking long term. I'm looking down the road. We've matured a lot since we got our start, Darren, and
Yeah.
I'm sure you two have seen it change quite a bit since you've started too. Um, and it is the more we support, I wouldn't call it fragmentation. I would maybe call it, I don't know, what's a better word? Specialization. And supporting that camaraderie and teamwork. I think that's the better path to success.
I think that is number one. I'm going into Professor Hood mode. That is the most masterful argument I have ever heard for what we're talking about here, and I applaud you. And I'm going to put a stamp of approval on that with an asterisk.
All right.
And I'll explain the asterisk. One of the differences, and I love every angle that was very, very eloquently stated and explained. Here's one of the differences that I think happens. That two things come to mind. The first one that comes to mind is volume. If somebody in that small town, there's no way in the world that all those specialists would come in because the volume just isn't there and it couldn't be financially sustained.
Uh-huh.
So from that perspective, that's where then that person who is more of the generalist, and I'll weave in my second point, the internist. So the generalist in UX is like the internist in the medical world. You can go in to see, and a lot of our primary care doctors are internists. So they can, they need to do something with your heart, they can address it skillfully, accurately. If there's something going on with your blood sugar, they can deal with that. If there's something going on with your kinesiology, whatever it is, you can name off 50 specializations, and the internist can actually skillfully address them all. So that's what the generalist is. Now today, because a lot of people came along after 2010, 2012, most of those people, they're learning about UX, but they're not learning about it the same way that a medical professional was learning that would qualify them to be an internist later. I mean, Christanna was able to do design and then go to research. A lot of other people don't even think about it. Don't even bring that up. But if there's volume and it can be sustained, then go for it. Now here's the bad part of it. So I get everything you said and I'm with it, but those are the caveats. There's got to be volume, and a lot of people that are specialists. Here's the other part I forgot to mention. A lot of people that are specialists in the medical world, they actually are well versed and they could be internists at the same time, and that's where the fragmentation happens today, because people would, power to the specialist, long live the specialist. But the funny thing is, the less you know about design, it hurts you as a researcher, and vice versa. So people need to train as if they were going to be an internist, and that actually makes you a better specialist. So that's I don't know, you folks have probably never heard me say, I've said that before. This is the first time I'm saying it for everybody in the world to hear it. Go ahead and do your specialization, and when there's volume to handle it, more power to you. But the more you know about I don't know, you folks have seen my 4 pillars of UX, and somebody counted it. There's 250 things on there on that illustration. So the more you know about those 250 things, the better of a specialist you're going to be. The less you know about those 250 things, you're not going to be able to bring a lot of value as a specialist. So more power to the specialist, but keep learning. Because the problem today is the average person coming into UX is, as they would say on In Living Color, a lazy lima bean. And because so many people are lazy, they don't want to learn it. And that's when the fragmentation comes, because then they don't bring value. And then people see it. What are these people doing? These UXers, they're not worth it. And it creates all these problems. So if people come in, I'm going to be quality, I'm going to learn everything that I can and go from there, then the discipline would be better off.
And I do agree with a lot of that. I really do. And I think you're hitting it right on the point. It's volume, right? If there is, let's say there's a lot of volume, the question then I would have is, how do you achieve the best quality possible if you're spread too thin?
Yeah, more people to pick up that load.
Right, exactly.
more people.
And so,
Yep.
when everyone knows their role, it's a great environment. But 100% knowing or seeking the education in all of the disciplines, I don't not recommend. I highly recommend that. I mean, I've done that work, and I'm continuing to do that work. And I'm not going to stop. I don't ever feel like
Right.
I've hit that max, and now I'm good, right? We're always going to continue to grow through pain, grow through discomfort, which we got to keep our focus on those wins, right?
Yep. Yep.
Wins.
But this is great. That's why I love hearing the different perspectives. And I think a lot of people are going to appreciate hearing that. That's dynamite stuff. And I will incorporate that. I will actually echo that. You will hear me repeat that. Andy said this on the show, and he's right on the money. Because it was that's nobody ever, they just dogmatically usually throw something out there. I'm like, no. It also helped with when the team is more knowledgeable about more aspects of the discipline, they also become more empowered. And then when the companies, like they're doing now, decide to cut the numbers down, the team is able to bring more discipline or more value because they know more about the different aspects of the discipline that they can bring forth to generate on the work. But if everybody's all segmented and then they get rid of half the team, what we gonna do now? Oh no. Okay, well, you're all in trouble. Get ready for the next round of layoffs.
Right.
That's what's gonna happen. But this is dynamite stuff, folks. I think we went way longer than we expected. So I want to thank everybody again for your patience as we got through this. But I love the energy, love the perspectives. I think people are going to love what we're talking about here. And hey, this is the kind of stuff that if people can ground themselves in the types of things that we're sharing, this is the kind of thing that vaults the discipline forward. And so thank you again. Thank you, Andy. Thank you, Christanna. Thank you, Prachi, for the time that you shared and giving to the UX community today. And we got to get together and do this again. I'm getting together a second time with everybody, so I'd like to give you a forewarning now. But
All right.
Again, we appreciate it. So, folks, we're going to wrap up here. Again, thanks to our guests. Appreciate that. And until next time, this is Darren Hood, the host of The World of UX, signing off. Happy UXing, everybody.
Thanks for joining us for this session of CX of M Radio. Be sure to rate, review, and subscribe to the show, and visit cxofm.org for more resources.